Hello, welcome to Student IQ. In this video, we will tackle about statistics and probability. Specifically, we will discuss about a random variable. So let's get started. But before we discuss our lesson for today, let us first recall concept in your grade 8 statistics and probability. Choose the correct answer. Do we follow the process of observation that leads to a single outcome that cannot be predicted with certainty? Exactly. It is called an experiment. Now, what is the result, or what do we call the result of an experiment? Very good. The result of an experiment is the outcome of the experiment. Now, what do we call the set of all possible outcome of probability experiment? Exactly. The set of possible outcome R is the sample space. Next is, what do we call the subset of the sample space? Very good. The subset of the sample space is an event. The next concept is that how do we determine the values, the possible outcome of the sample space? Okay, very good. So we can determine the possible outcome of the sample space through table, tree diagram, systematic listing, and FPC, or the fundamental principle of counting. Okay, well done. I am very happy that you were able to recall important concepts in statistics because this concept plays an important role in our topic for today. Before we unlock our topic for today, let us have a game. Do you want a game? Okay. So this game is called the number of fortune because if you guess the number correctly, it will give you fortune. The mechanics is simple. The person who can successfully guess what the number the spinners will land on after 5 attempts will have the chance to win a brand new 200 peso bill and trip to their school campus. Okay, so are you ready? Okay, so based on our activity, what are the possible results of spinning a wheel? Very good. So the possible result of spinning the wheel is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this collection of possible of outcome is what we call the sample space. Okay. Now, why do we think that we get different results every time we spin the wheel? Okay, because our activity involves random. Now, if we spin again the wheel, now if we spin the wheel again, can anyone predict with certainty what the number the spinners will land on? Okay. Say for example, so if we spin again the wheel, can anyone predict with certainty what the spinner pointer will land on? Okay, very good. So since it is a random experiment, we cannot predict the output with certainty, but we can predict the probability of what the spinner pointers will land on. Okay, so these concepts opens the idea of a random variable, which is our today's topic. But before that, let me first introduce to you the things that you need to know in this lesson. In this lesson, you should be able to illustrate a random variable. You need to find the values of a random variable. And lastly, you need to distinguish between a discrete and a continuous random variable. Okay, and together we'll meet these objectives. All right? All right. So what is a random variable? Or what do you mean by random? Random simply means unpredictable. Variable means letter. It is a letter which represents the values that we don't know yet. Okay? So hence random variable is a variable or it's a letter which represents the outcome of the trial, an event, an experiment, or an event. Or it is a specific number which is different each time the trial, experiment, or event is repeated. Since it is a variable, it is usually represented by capital letters like X, Y, Z, and etc. It is called random because its value is the result of chance or a random event. To consider our example, consider our previous activity involving spinning the wheel. So the sample space is the set of possible outcome, or the sample space of our previous activity is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Now, if we spin the wheel one more time, the result could be any possible outcome in the sample space, right? It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So if we let x, if we let x to represent the result every time you spin the wheel, then x is called a random variable. Okay, do you follow? Okay, now what is the difference between the sample space and the random variable? So the sample space can contain a letter or a combinations of letter and number. So let us discuss it later. So usually a random variable is usually associated with the probability, no? The probability of or the likelihood that one will occur every time you spin the wheel. So let us discuss it in the next video, the probability. So now another question is that are all variables random? Okay, so that's not necessarily the case. You can have a random variable if it came from a random experiment. Okay? Suppose we conduct an experiment combining hydrogen and oxygen. Can you determine exactly the result of the combination? Okay, very good. So the result of the combination is simply H2O or simply water. Now consider the equation of plus x is equal to 20. What could be the possible value of x that will yield 20? Exactly. X is equal to 15. X is equal to 15. So notice that every experiment we conducted yield single or one possible result. Now consider another experiment involving tossing two coins. We are interested to determine the number of tails that will come out. Now, can you determine exactly with certainty how many of tails will come out if we toss two coins? Or does this experiment yield only single possible result? Exactly. This experiment will yield more than one result, which is head and tail. Okay, so this experiment is an example of a random experiment and can be represented by a random variable. Now, how do we determine the value of a random variable t? First, we list the sample space or we list the possible outcome of tossing two coins. As I said earlier, that the sample space can contain a letter or a combinations of letter and number. So the sample space of tossing two coins is head head, HT, TH, and TT, which can be determined using a tree diagram. Okay, so the second step is to count the number of tails in each outcome and assign this number to this outcome. So there are two tables. The first table is the first column is for the outcome, which is the set of all possible outcome or the sample space, and the second column consists the numbers of tails or how many tails are there in one sample point. If, for example, HH0, it has a 0 tail, HT, it has a 1 tail, and so on. The last step is to determine the value of a random variable. So the value of a so the possible number of tails that will came out if we toss two coins could be 0, 1, and 2. Okay, so if we toss two coins, no, the values could be 0, 1, and 2. Remember that random variable, the values of the random variable is a specific number as compared to the sample space. Okay, are there any questions? And so far, so let us consider another experiment consisting a basket contains 10 red balls and 4 blue balls. If 3 balls are drawn from the basket one after the other, determine the possible values of a random variable R representing the numbers of red balls. Okay, so post this video and try to determine the values of a random variable R. Okay, are you done? Okay, very good. So the possible value, the possible value of red ball can be 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So a random variable can be discrete or continuous. A random variable can be discrete and continuous. A discrete random variable is the values our values is a random variable that whose values is obtained by counting, meaning uh, a random variable can be classified as discrete and continuous. A discrete random variable is a random variable whose values is obtained by counting. Take note of the counting. And a random variable can be also continuous if the value can be obtained by measuring. A discrete is counting and a continuous is measuring. So let us consider an example. To classify each random variable as either discrete or continuous. The, num the number of arrivals at the emergency room between midnight and 6 a.m. to midnight 6 a.m. Okay, so the question is, can you or can or so let us consider an example. So let us consider an example. Classify each random variable as either discrete or continuous. So the number of arrivals at emergency room between midnight and 6 a.m. Now try to ask yourself, can the number of arrivals is the number of arrivals at the emergency room between midnight and 6 p.m. can be counted or not? If it can be counted, then it is discrete or otherwise continuous. Okay, very good. Since the number since the number of arrivals between at the emergency in the number of arrivals since the number of arrivals. Okay. So let us consider an example. So let us consider an example, classifying each random variable as either discrete or continuous. So the number of arrivals at the emergency room between midnight and 6 a.m. So try to ask yourself, if if the arrivals at emergency room between midnight and 6 a.m. can be counted or measurable. If it is counted, then it is a discrete random variables, otherwise continuous. Okay, very good. It is a discrete random variable because we can count the numbers of arrivals at the emergency room between midnight and 6 a.m. Okay. Example number 2. The weight of a box of a cereal labeled is 8 ounces. So now try to ask yourself if the weight of the box can be counted or measurable. Okay. So hence this is a continuous random variable because weight can only be determined by measuring. Okay. Or by using a weighing instrument. Now, the temperature of a cup of coffee served at a restaurant is also continuous because we cannot count the temperature, right? We can only measure the temperature. Okay. So the next question is the number of applicants of a job. It is a discrete or continuous? Okay, very good. It is a discrete since we can count the number of applicants, no, for a job. Next is the number of COVID cases of COVID-19 in a particular country in a coming month. Yes, very good. This is a discrete because we can count the number, right? The next question is the number of boys in a randomly selected three-child family. Very good. It is a discrete. And the last question is the air pressure of a tire on an automobile. Yes, this is a continuous random variable because we can only measure the air pressure of a tire of an automobile. Okay, so are there any questions? Okay, very good. So to wrap up our lesson for today, what is a random variable? A random variable is a variable which represents the outcome of a trial or an experiment or an event. Now, what is the step of finding the values of a random variable? Okay, so first you need to list the sample space. Second is to list the possible value for random variable and identify the value for each simple event. And lastly, you need to determine the value of a random variable. Next is what is a discrete random variable? A discrete random variable is whose values is obtained by counting. How about what is the continuous random variable? Okay, those values that can obtain by measuring. Okay, so to check your understanding, try to post this video and answer the following questions and comment down below your answer. So that would be all for today's video. I hope that you learned something from this video, specifically what is a random variable means and its classifications. If you have any questions, then comment down below. Okay, thank you and goodbye.